The engines roared as the Boeing 737 lifted off the runway, its nose piercing the thick veil of clouds above. Inside the cockpit, Captain Mark Reynolds and First Officer Julia Carter monitored their instruments with precision, unaware of the chilling events that would soon unfold. "Climbing to flight level 300, Reynolds said, his voice calm and practiced. Julia nodded and adjusted the heading. Outside, an unsettling darkness stretched across the sky, the moon hidden behind a thick veil of clouds. In the passenger cabin, travelers settled into their seats, some dozing off, while others watched in-flight entertainment. Among them, investigative journalist Ethan Moore thumbed through his notes, researching a string of mysterious disappearances linked to this flight route. He had boarded hoping to uncover a story. What he found would be far beyond his comprehension. Suddenly, the cabin lights flickered. A low hum resonated through the aircraft, sending an uneasy shiver down Ethan's spine. He glanced out of the window, but the darkness beyond revealed nothing. Back in the cockpit, Julia frowned at the sudden warning light flashing on the control panel. "Mark, we've got an issue with the CAS, Traffic Collision Avoidance System. It's showing another aircraft in our immediate vicinity." "That can't be right," Mark muttered, scanning the radar. "Air traffic control didn't report any conflicting traffic." "Confirm with them." Julia keyed the mic. "Tower, this is Flight 184, we're showing unidentified traffic at our altitude. Can you confirm?" Static filled the channel, followed by a distorted voice. "Negative, Flight 184. No traffic in your vicinity. Maintain course." Mark exchanged a wary glance with Julia. Before they could respond, turbulence rocked the plane violently. A collective gasp swept through the cabin as Ethan's pen tumbled from his grasp, skittering down the aisle. A sudden jolt sent overhead compartments flying open, and the oxygen masks deployed without warning. "Brace for impact!" Mark shouted into the intercom, his hands gripping the yoke tightly. But there was no impact. No deafening crash, no sudden jolt, only an eerie stillness that stretched unnaturally through the cabin. Instead, a chilling silence engulfed the aircraft. The turbulence ceased, and everything seemed wrong. Ethan peered outside again, his breath hitching in his throat. Another plane, an Airbus A320, appeared out of nowhere, flying parallel to them. Its windows were dark, and its fuselage bore the unmistakable signs of decay: peeling paint, rusted metal, and something else, faces pressed against the windows, hollow and lifeless. Julia's voice cracked with fear. "Mark, what is that?" Before Mark could respond, the Airbus vanished into thin air. The cabin erupted into panicked whispers, passengers clutching their seats. Lisa, a flight attendant, tried to maintain order but was visibly shaken. "Please stay calm, everyone. We're investigating the situation." Ethan grabbed his camera, documenting the unsettling stillness that gripped the cabin. He turned to Lisa. "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "No, but I've heard the stories. Some flights don't make it back. They just disappear." Suddenly, the control panel came alive with a piercing warning chime. "Traffic! Traffic!" the automated system blared. But there was nothing ahead, nothing visible. Mark and Julia struggled to maintain altitude as an invisible force seemed to pull them off course. Ethan gritted his teeth, his pulse racing. The answers he sought were within reach, but at what cost? As the plane veered wildly, a distorted voice echoed through the cockpit speakers. "Turn back, before it's too late." And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the night swallowed them whole. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction, its dense canopy blocking out most of the moonlight. The survivors huddled together, their eyes darting toward the shadows beyond the flickering remains of the plane's wreckage. The air was thick with tension, and each rustling leaf carried an ominous whisper, stirring an unease that prickled their skin. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, his camera hanging loosely around his neck. "We need to document everything," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "No one will believe this." Claire crouched beside the ancient relic, running her fingers gently over its elaborate carvings. I need to examine this more closely, she said, her voice trembling. It shouldn't be here, and yet it feels like it belongs. Rhodes paced near the wreckage, his military instincts taking over. Survival first. We need shelter, water, and a way to signal for help. He shot Claire a wary glance. That thing can wait. Before anyone could respond, an eerie whisper echoed through the trees. The group fell silent, exchanging nervous glances. Lisa, one of the flight attendants, clutched her torn uniform, her breathing ragged. Did anyone else hear that? Ethan slowly raised his camera, pointing it toward the darkness. It's not just the wind, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, a shadow shifted between the trees. It moved too quickly for the eye to follow, an unsettling blur in the moonlit darkness. Claire gasped, stumbling back. It's watching us, she whispered. We need to move, now. Rhodes took charge, motioning the group to gather their supplies. We head north, away from the wreckage. Whatever's out there, we don't want to be sitting ducks. The survivors trudged through the thick undergrowth, the darkness closing in around them. Strange symbols appeared carved into the trees, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Claire examined one, her face pale. These markings, they matched the relic. Great, Ethan muttered. More proof we're in the middle of something we shouldn't be. Hours passed in uneasy silence, until the group stumbled upon an ancient stone structure hidden among the dense foliage. Vines wrapped around its crumbling walls, and the air inside the ruin felt heavy with an unexplainable presence. Lisa hesitated at the entrance, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe we shouldn't go in, something about this place feels wrong. Rhodes gritted his teeth. Nowhere is safe. Let's check it out. Inside, the group found carvings eerily similar to the relic Claire carried. She ran her fingers over them, feeling a strange warmth emanating from within. This place, it's connected to whatever brought us here. As Ethan documented the carvings with his camera, a deep, guttural growl echoed through the ruins. The air grew frigid, and the survivors froze in place. We're not alone, Rhodes whispered, drawing his knife. The darkness crept in tighter, an unseen force lurking just beyond their vision, sending a chill down their spines with every breath. Whatever lay within these ancient ruins, it was far from welcoming. The survivors pressed deeper into the ruins, their footsteps echoing through the cold stone corridors. The flickering light from their flashlights cast elongated shadows, making the intricate carvings on the walls seem alive. The intricate carvings on the walls mirrored the relic Claire held, their mysterious meanings hinting at an ancient connection. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow and adjusted his camera. This place, it's ancient. Older than anything I've ever seen, he muttered, his voice hushed. Claire gave a brief nod, scanning the surroundings with unease. It's not just old, there's something about it that feels aware. She ran her fingers over an inscription, feeling the strange warmth pulse beneath her touch. Rhodes, his instincts honed from years of experience, tightened his grip on his knife, his gaze sweeping the corridor for any sign of movement. Keep moving. We don't know what else is down here. His voice was steady, but Ethan noticed the way his eyes flickered warily toward every dark corner. The group continued cautiously, weaving through the maze-like structure. The air grew colder with each step, and a suffocating silence wrapped around them. Then, a whisper, soft, unintelligible, drifted through the corridor, sending chills down their spines. Lisa clutched Ethan's arm. Tell me you heard that, she whispered, her face pale. Before he could answer, a deafening clang echoed behind them. They spun around, their flashlights illuminating an ancient door that had slammed shut, trapping them inside. Panic surged through the group. No way that just happened on its own, Rhodes muttered, stepping forward cautiously. He pressed his hand against the door, but it refused to budge. Claire swallowed hard. I think we're meant to be here. The relic, it brought us. Ethan exhaled sharply. Well, let's hope it gets us out too. Suddenly, the carvings on the walls began to glow, casting an ethereal blue light throughout the chamber. Symbols pulsed in rhythm with Claire's relic, the air thrumming with unseen energy. "What is this?" Lisa gasped, stepping back. Before anyone could react, the globe formed into ghostly warriors draped in ancient armor, their hollow eyes fixed on the intruders with an unsettling stillness. They stood silently, watching the survivors with empty eyes. Rhodes instinctively raised his knife, but Claire grabbed his arm. "Wait," she whispered. "They're not attacking." One of the spectral figures stepped forward, its translucent hand reaching toward Claire's relic. The moment they connected, a vision exploded in her mind, flashes of a civilization long forgotten, an artifact that held immense power, and a warning of something awakening beneath them. Claire staggered back, gasping, "We have to leave, now!" But before they could move, the ruins trembled, and an ominous growl reverberated through the air. The ghostly figures faded, leaving behind only the pulsing glow of the walls. "Move!" Rhodes barked, leading the group toward the only visible exit. As they sprinted through the narrow passageways, Ethan glanced back. Shadows slithered after them, their dark tendrils stretching hungrily toward their heels. The chase was on, and the darkness was hungry. The survivors sprinted through the crumbling ruins, their footsteps echoing like distant thunder. The air grew thick, heavy with the weight of unseen eyes lurking in the darkness. The carvings emitted an unsteady glow, pulsing as if the ancient walls themselves were breathing. Ethan led the group with urgency, his camera swinging wildly around his neck as it captured fleeting glimpses of the spectral horrors closing in behind them. Claire clutched the relic tightly, its warmth growing stronger, guiding them deeper into the labyrinth. Rhodes kept to the rear, his knife held firm, scanning every shadow for movement. "Faster!" Rhodes barked, his voice strained. "We can't let them corner us." Lisa stumbled over a loose stone, falling hard to the ground. Ethan turned back, helping her up just as a dark tendril slithered inches from her feet. "We're not getting out of here alive," she panted, fear clouding her eyes. "We will," Ethan reassured her, pulling her forward. "We have to." They burst into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. In the center stood an enormous stone altar, its surface covered in the same glowing symbols. The relic in Claire's hands pulsed in sync with the altar, drawing her toward it. "This is it," she whispered. "The relic belongs here." Rhodes frowned. "Are you sure? What if placing it there makes things worse?" "It's a risk we have to take," Claire said, stepping forward. With trembling hands, she placed the relic onto the altar. Instantly, the room trembled as an eerie hum filled the air. A blinding light erupted from the altar, illuminating the entire chamber. The ghostly figures that had pursued them appeared at the room's edges, frozen in place. Their hollow eyes fixated on the relic, an unearthly wail rising from their translucent forms. The ruins shook violently, and cracks splintered across the stone floor. Ethan shielded his eyes, his camera forgotten in the chaos. "What's happening?" he yelled over the noise. Claire's face twisted in anguish as the relic seemed to drain the energy from her body. "It's absorbing something, it's sealing them away." Rhodes grabbed her just as the relic released a final pulse of energy, sending shockwaves through the chamber. The ghostly figures shattered into wisps of smoke, and the eerie glow dimmed to nothingness. Silence fell, broken only by the heavy breathing of the survivors. Lisa collapsed onto the ground, exhausted. "Is it over?" Ethan slowly approached the altar. The relic lay motionless, its once pulsing glow extinguished. "I think we did it." Rhodes surveyed the chamber warily, his jaw clenched and eyes darting to every shadow. "Let's not take any chances. We need to get out of here, now." As they retraced their steps, the ruins felt different, lighter, as if the oppressive presence had lifted. Emerging into the open forest, the dawn was breaking, casting a golden hue over the wreckage of the plane. Claire looked back one last time, her heart pounding in her chest. Memories of their harrowing escape flooded her mind, the ghostly figures, the relentless darkness, the chilling whispers that still echoed in her ears. She shuddered, tightening her grip around herself. "Some things should never be disturbed," she whispered, a lingering doubt settling deep within her. Ethan raised his camera and snapped one final picture. But people will want to know what happened here. Rhodes gave a weary nod. Let's hope they never do. Leaving the relic behind, the survivors trudged toward the rising sun, the weight of their ordeal pressing heavily on their hearts. They had escaped, but the price they paid would stay with them forever.